Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Nick Zimmerly. Today we're going to be making Manchego cheese. Very excited. I just recently made my first Manchego and we're going to go ahead and try to recreate that recipe. So I'm brand new to cheese making myself, so we're going to kind of learn together. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so what I've got right here is my immersion circulator, also known as a sous vide machine, and this is a water bath. This is heated up to exactly 88 degrees, and what I have here is a gallon of milk, also at 88 degrees. And so we will get our ingredients together and get started. So first off, we're going to put our cultures in. I've got 1/8 of a teaspoon of Thermophilic culture and 1/8 of a teaspoon of Mesophilic culture. And you can find these online. You have cheese making and brew shops that you can find this at. And so what we're gonna do is let this sit. We're gonna cover it with saran wrap and let this sit for 45 minutes for these cultures to rehydrate and ferment. All right guys, so you see, I'm learning with you guys. So what I did not do is we're gonna go ahead and stir these cultures in. And what I have here is I've taken a half a teaspoon of calcium chloride and put it in a 1/4 cup of distilled water. Do not use chlorinated water because that can kill the cultures in here. And we're using calcium chloride because I am using store-bought pasteurized milk. And so this will fortify that with calcium. And you'll end up with a firmer cheese and it won't fall apart. So we will thoroughly mix that. And then we will let it, like I said, ferment and ripen for the next 45 minutes. All right, this has now been sitting for 45 minutes, ripening. So what we're gonna do next is I've got some lipase right here. Put a half a teaspoon in a 1/4 cup of water, and we're gonna go ahead and thoroughly mix that in for a good 30 seconds to 1 minute. All right. Now we got that in there. We're going to go ahead and we've got liquid rennet. You can get animal rennet or you can get vegetable rennet. Animal rennet is more traditional, but it's up to you. So we've got half a teaspoon of that in a 1/4 cup of distilled water. And this, you're going to stir for 1 minute and no more, because at this point right now, it is already starting to set, and this is going to set the milk into curds, which will then end up being our cheese in the end. All right guys, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this set for another 45 minutes until the curd is set. So this is after 45 minutes of setting, and after checking for a clean break, which there is a clean break in the curds, we're going to start to cut the curds as small as we can get them. And this is gonna take about 3 to 4 minutes. No need to rush, because this cheese isn't something you rush. If you rush it, then you're not going to get the end product that you're looking for. So take your time cutting the curds, and you're going to cut them as small as possible. Now cut the other way. And then after this, we're also going to cut diagonally, which I will be using a whisk for because sometimes you just gotta make do with what you got. I don't have. You can buy a cheese cutter online, but I've got a whisk, so that'll do the job just fine. And just gently, you don't want to mix the curds back into the whey, and so you just a gentle push and stir after the cutting will do. And you see I'm just gently pushing that. And we're gonna let this sit for about 10 minutes. And then you can see the whey has separated. The curds are gonna expel whey throughout this process, which is totally normal. That's what you want. And we're just going to stir for about 30 minutes nonstop. So, because if you stop, the curds will begin to form a mass and heal back up, and you don't want that. So just stir, like I said, like with the whisk, stir gently. And you're gonna do that for a whole 30 minutes. And then we're gonna let it rest again after that. And I'm just cutting some of the larger curds that I missed with the spoon. So just any larger curds that you see, just go ahead and cut them with the spoon as you go. All right, so we're gonna bring this up to 104. We've got my sous vide set to 104, and we're going to let it, it's going to slowly come up to 104, and this is going to take about 45 minutes. So you're going to stir again for 45 minutes. This is after resting for about 5 to 10 minutes after that initial 30-minute stir. So this is going to be stirred gently for another 45 minutes. And this is cooking the curds. And as soon as it reaches 104 degrees in there, you're going to stop stirring. And then we will, once that process is done, cooking the curds, that will acidify the curds as well. We will begin to press them. And so, as you can see, I've pulled it away from the sous vide, or the immersion circulator, or the water bath, and we're going to, I'm using springform pans for cheesecake with cheesecloth in them, since I don't have an official cheese mold, but these will work just fine. So we're going to let the whey drain from the curds, and then once these are filled up to the top, then we will begin to press the curds. And so, see, I've got them all filled up, and I'm folding the cheesecloth over so we can begin to press. And we'll do a series of presses, a couple of 2-hour presses, and then a 12-hour or overnight press. And so as you can see, I'm placing something on top of this, and then I've got a 5-pound bag of apples. So anything that weighs 5 or 10 pounds will do. And we're just gonna press those curds down for 2 hours. All right, we're 2 hours into our first press. And what we're gonna do is take this off. And what I had done behind the scenes is I had placed this, instead of this flat surface, I placed this underneath it into the springform pans that I used, and since I don't have a cheese mold. That way this would press this down into there, because it is a hard cheese, so we need a firmer press than just that flat surface. So what we're gonna do now, and you might notice some whey has been expelled into whatever vessel you have it in. which you can either throw that out or you could use it to make ricotta cheese or things like that. So, so what we're doing is we're simply just gonna flip this over and do exactly what we just did and repress it. Okay, so we're another 2 hours into this second press, and so we're gonna do one last press, which is going to be for 12 hours. And if you have an extra 5 pounds on top of the 5 pounds you've already had on it, to make 10 pounds for this 12 hours, that would do some good, but it's not going to be a make or break for this kind of cheese to not have that extra weight on there. So, like I said, we're just going to do the same thing we've done the past 2 times, but this time press for 12 hours. All right, so what we're making here is we're making a brine for our cheese. You can either salt your cheese curds before you press them, or you can brine your cheese. So that's what we're gonna do. And this is 2 quarts of water with 1 pound of salt mixed into it. And your rule of thumb is if you take an egg and it floats, your brine is salty enough. So that's 1 pound of salt to 2 quarts of water. And then what we've got is our calcium chloride. And we're just gonna stir a teaspoon of that into our brine. And after that, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. This is gonna prevent your cheese from becoming slimy while it sits in this brine. And then after we take it out of the brine, it will dry. And once that's dry, we will then age our cheese. So make sure all that's nice and mixed in. And you'll want to make sure that if you heated your water before pouring the salt in to help it dissolve better, just make sure this is at room temp. But I stirred the salt in until it was dissolved while the water was room temp. So make sure it's chilled before you add all that stuff in. So now this is made, we will take our cheese out of the press and we're gonna brine it. Okay, so we've got our brine made, we've got our cheese out of the press, and at this point it is firm but still slightly squishy, and you gotta kind of be careful with it. So we're gonna place this into the brine, and since it will float, we're gonna put like a plate on top of this. And so we'll place the plate on top, and we're gonna keep this in here for about 6 hours before we leave it out to dry at room temp on a rack or elevated, so it can dry evenly. And we'll flip that while it's drying, and then we'll put it on our cheesecake. All right, so I forgot to record myself taking the cheese out of the brine, but it's out of the brine onto a rack to sit for a couple of days somewhere. If you're prone to flies in your house, then you can put some kind of netting or whatever over it. But these are gonna sit here, and you're gonna wanna flip it each day for these 2 days. And then we'll throw it in a Tupperware container in my dry curing chamber. The Tupperware container will produce some humidity, enough humidity that it needs, and it'll sit at 55 degrees, which I have my dry curing chamber with my cured meats. And the only reason I'm putting this into that Tupperware container is because I have some white penicillium molds that I don't want on the cheese, just because that's not what I'm trying to shoot for this cheese. Doesn't need any mold. Natural molds may or may not form, and that's okay. But I don't want to actually intentionally put any white penicillium mold like I have on my salamis in this. So that's why we're having it in the Tupperware container. So here in a couple of days, we'll throw it in the chamber. All right, so I've got my cheese right here. I'm gonna put the lid on this, and then we will open this up. This is my dry curing chamber. Here's some salamis I've got working. So we're gonna put this up top, and there's already this is already set at 55 degrees, so the humidity produced in there will be sufficient enough for what we're shooting for. So we'll keep an eye on this, and we'll see here in about 2 to 3 weeks how it tastes. All right, so we've pulled our Manchego cheese out of our chamber, and we're just flipping it, and it smells really nice so far, but we've still got another week and a half or maybe even 2 before we're gonna slice into it. Really, you can age it for months if you wanted to, but truth be told, in Spain, your typical Manchego cheese is eaten at the 2 or 3 week mark, but and a lot of it never makes it to the US. But of course, you can find 6 to 9 month aged Manchego cheese at the store, so you can absolutely let this go for months, but we're gonna do about 3 weeks, so because my last Manchego was at the 3 week mark and it was delicious. So we'll get back to you in about a week and a half. All right, guys, so we're taking another peek into the chamber once more before our Manchego cheese is ready. So we're gonna we'll give it another week to go, and that'll hit about just over the 3 week mark, and which like I said, you can go months with this. About this size, I would suggest like 2 months, but I've been told by professionals that 3 week Manchego, a young Manchego, is actually the more desired Manchego. So in Spain anyway. So like I said, 1 more week and we'll slice this open. All right, guys, so got our Manchego cheese that we've been aging for about 3 weeks now. And so it smells wonderful, and it's nice and firm, nice and cheesy. And so let's slice this one. Let's give it a little taste. Awesome. Got a nice press on it. No mechanical holes or anything throughout. It smells delicious. It tastes just like Manchego cheese. And so, like we said, this is a young Manchego. It is not uncommon for someone in Spain, a cheesemaker in Spain, to eat a young Manchego. But of course, you can age this for months. But from what I've seen so far, the 3 to 4 week mark is where it's at. So I think I'm gonna let this one age for a little bit longer, just to kind of compare. Maybe go 2 months on this one. So maybe we'll get back to you then, and stay tuned for more cheese making.